Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to ROIDS, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Steroids Podcast. I bet you guys are wondering, since the last episode, I told you that I was on an experiment of a cycle, which was 900 milligrams of primobolan per week, 750 milligrams of testosterone per week, and 10 units of growth hormone per day. Okay, so I did the experiment for a month, and I stopped it, but I did it for a month, and let me tell you the effects that I had during that month, okay? So I gained 35 pounds during that month. Now, this was definitely not all muscle weight, okay? It was not even close to all muscle weight. A lot of it was actually food in my stomach. So when you take the growth hormone at the higher dosage like that, it really slows down the process of the food going through your gut. So within days of starting, my gut got really distended and it was full of food. Like I wasn't pooping much. And basically all the food that I would eat would just kind of sit in my digestive system. And, so my gut was very distended because of being on the large dosage. And then, once the month was finished and I, went off for a little bit and then went back on, but only taking 3 units a day now, 1/3 of the dose, the gut is not distended like it was before. It wasn't from organ growth or something. It was because literally food was just loaded into my digestive system sitting there because the growth hormone slowed down the gastric mobility, the rate at which your digestive system processes the stuff that you put into it. So the main effect that I got right away taking the 10 units of growth hormone per day was my appetite just went insane. My appetite went absolutely insane. For the first few days, it would only be insane at certain times. Sometimes I'd feel like, well, I don't even need food. I don't even need to eat because, the growth hormone was raising my blood sugar. But then after about maybe 5 days or so, it was like I just became just ravenously hungry, like probably hungry in a way that I've never been hungry before. So I was eating like 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day and just like just going nuts, like eating all kinds of food and getting a lot bigger and a lot stronger pretty quickly. So like I said, I gained 35 pounds during that month. So, that's nearly 10 pounds per week, which is totally insane. But I would say 15 of those pounds were food sitting in my stomach, literally just extra food sitting in my stomach than what I had before. Like the distension that I got from using the growth hormone was like unbelievable. Like how much it was pushing my stomach out because the food was in there. So definitely a good 15 pounds of food just sitting in my stomach, accounting for, part of that 35-pound weight gain in a month. And then water, probably again, like around, 15 pounds or so, like 10 to 15 pounds of water added to my body. So it blew my face up. My face became like an egg, the shape of an egg, completely swollen and really blown up. And then also all around my body, like As far as water retention, like on my skin and other areas of my body, yeah, absolutely. If I'd ever have anything contacting my skin in any area, it would leave some kind of a mark there. And then I gained about 5-6 pounds or so of solid muscle during that month and became a lot stronger. I'll just tell you, like, for one of those workouts, for one of the workouts that I was doing, 1 week I pressed 125-pound dumbbells on the incline press with perfect form, like a slow controlled negative and then an explosive positive for 4.5 reps, one workout. And then I came back to the gym 7 days later and tried to do the same thing again, a maximum reps with those 125-pound dumbbells using that form on the incline press. And I doubled the amount of reps, 8.5 reps, only with 7 days in between. So that was the food, the growth hormone, the steroids altogether, fueling that kind of adaptation. So, my body was adapting to the stress I was putting on it in the gym hardcore. Experienced, being able to eat a lot of food, strength gains, mass gains, etc. And I think I gained maybe 3-4 pounds of fat or something during that week or during that month. So gained 15 pounds of food inside my stomach that then, now it's gone. And then, gained a lot of strength, gained 5-6 pounds of solid muscle tissue. My whole body is definitely considerably bigger now. My muscles, they're considerably bigger. It's very noticeable. And then gained something 3, 4, 5 pounds of fat as well. Even though I was on a ton of growth hormone and on a ton of steroids, that still wasn't blocking complete, for eating around 6,000 calories or so per day, at least 5,000 per day. That wasn't able to block any kind, all fat acquisition. So that was the effects of running that cycle experiment. The 900 milligrams primobolan per week, 750 milligrams testosterone per week, and 10 units of growth hormone per day. Did it for a month. Had some really strong effects from that. And then at the end of the month, I started to get a sexual dysfunction and also a foggy head and a low motivation because of my prolactin rise. I'm pretty sensitive to prolactin. I definitely can't use, any Tren at all without using pramipexole or cabergoline to reduce prolactin, or else after the second week on Tren, I will be completely, not able to function. I have no sexual function. And then my head will feel really cloudy, or I'm kind of spinning up in the clouds, like I have a foggy head or something like that. That's from Tren. So I did get a more mild form of that, but a significant form of it from using the high growth hormone for a month. And the weird thing about it was that I didn't have any of those prolactin effects until after 25 days or something. And then from day 25 to day 30, I had those that sexual dysfunction. And then I had the really foggy head too, So after a while of having those super high growth hormone levels, it seems reasonable to assume that my body tried to make an adaptation to get homeostasis again. And for some reason that made my prolactin go up. But prolactin and growth hormone are both very similar molecules. So it's also possible that having just such an abundance of growth hormone, there's barely any difference between prolactin and growth hormone. They both come from the pituitary gland too, and it's possible that some of that growth hormone or some of the metabolites from it or something were attaching to my prolactin receptors. I don't know. that was just my experience on it. So I did have some sexual side effects from 10 IUs per day that, I had zero sexual side effects until right at about a month. And that was right when those kicked in. But right before that, I had zero. So take that for what it's worth. Interesting experiment I did. Now I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going back to a more moderate thing now that I, figured that out and had that happen. So let's get into some questions. The first one is from Eric. I'm 49 and have been lifting my entire life. I put in the work at the gym and in the kitchen, but I've reached my plateau. Thinking about starting small. 500 milligrams per week of testosterone cypionate for 12 weeks and 30 milligrams of dianabol for 8 weeks in the middle of the 12-week cycle. Also 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day. Thoughts? Yeah, that sounds good. 30 milligrams of dianabol for 8 weeks is a really good way to do it. 30 milligrams of dianabol is definitely enough to feel it and see like strength gains and performance gains in the gym right away, within a week of starting your cycle. And then putting that on top of the 500 milligrams per week of testosterone for your first cycle, I think you'll be really satisfied. So having the Dbol in the middle of the cycle too, that makes sense to me. I mean, the middle of your cycle, you said that you're going to do it 8 weeks in the middle and you're doing a 12-week cycle. So that means you're going to start, the Dbol after 2 weeks on testosterone, and then you're going to pull out the Dbol and do 2 weeks more on testosterone, after that 8 weeks with the testosterone and Dbol combined in the middle. And that sounds great to me. So you're going to have that Dbol in during the cycle when your testosterone is most potent. Sounds great. 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day. Yeah, that'll probably cover you. But since it's your first cycle and you don't know how sensitive you are to estrogen, you never know. Like, you might need 1 milligram of Arimidex every day, or you might only need, 1 or 2 milligrams per week. Or some people even need no Arimidex on that kind of cycle or dosage. It really depends on the person. So you will know once you try that. But you should expect, significant performance and size gains on that cycle, especially from the dianabol, because the 30 milligrams of dianabol per day, that's definitely as strong. Just the 30 milligrams of dianabol per day is definitely as strong as 500 milligrams of testosterone per week. Dianabol is way stronger at being a performance enhancing drug than testosterone is. The next question is from Cam, who says, how do you know if you're psychologically addicted or dependent on PEDs? I am a 38-year-old entrepreneur and high dose test makes me 3 times more productive than when I'm natural. I like this question. So how do you know if you're psychologically addicted or dependent on PEDs? Well, I'll tell you, most guys that start experimenting with hormones don't want to stop. Or they, if they do stop, it's for a reason, and they want to start doing it again later, because like these things, if you're a man, it's pretty natural to want to be as powerful as you can be, to want to build your body up, to be as powerful as it can be, to have the greatest stature that you can have, to be big and fast and strong. These are really natural desires of almost 100% of men. So if you find something that helps you do that, you're going to want to use it. So that's, then when you stop using it, you will notice right away, no matter what people say about like, oh yeah, you can keep your gains if you keep lifting heavy. You will notice that when you stop using it, those gains or benefits that you had from using it immediately begin to deteriorate. So that's, them helping you fulfill a natural desire, the steroids. And then when you stop taking them, those natural desires that were being fulfilled, immediately going away, that obviously creates a situation where you're going to want to continue using them. So are you addicted to them? I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, but it's more of like a decision, like I want to use this, and so I'm going to. It's because, guys who use TRT, for example, testosterone replacement therapy, they're not addicted to testosterone or something, but they're using it for a reason. It makes them feel better, and so that's where I kind of like draw the line, is if you're psychologically addicted or dependent on them, that's where you feel like, for me, the way that I think of that is that I feel like that's somebody who is using high dosages regularly, like they're always on cycle, and they feel like they cannot come off cycle. Like they do not cruise, they do not ever come off, they do not really ever even lower their dosages much, they're just constantly on, and it's having, a negative effect on their health, and they know it, and they just keep on doing it because they feel like there is no alternative. Going back to being natural would basically be like, not worth living or something like that. That's what I consider to be, that's when the PEDs are in their life and they're being a negative thing. They're being a negative thing that the person is feeling like they're using, and it's not really like benefiting their life. It's actually causing them harm, and it's causing them to do actions and take decisions that are not in their best interests. They're not using it responsibly at all, just completely abusing it. So that's different levels for different people. But generally, something like 500 milligrams of testosterone per week or something, like if somebody takes that year round, or 750 milligrams of testosterone per week, or even 1 gram of testosterone per week, okay? If somebody takes that year round, you can look at their blood work if they're not taking anything else, and it's not really going to be like, like havoc on their blood work. Okay. So in those cases, if somebody is using, moderate dosages and, taking care of their health, as best as they can, and then this thing is helping them, fulfill those natural desires of being bigger, stronger, faster, having a greater stature than normal, I don't really consider that to be psychologically addictive, especially if they can see themselves and be like, yeah, well, I wouldn't like to go back to natural. That's not what I would prefer. Because, me, myself, this is how I think, like, no, I don't want to be natural. I like using testosterone. But, if I had to be natural, it definitely wouldn't be the end of my life. Like, there's tons of other stuff I like doing. Like, I've got other things that I like doing. My identity isn't solely invested in only bodybuilding, and I'm a bodybuilder, and that's all I am. And, without bodybuilding, I don't know who I am. That's not how I feel. So, I do not feel like I'm addicted to PEDs, even though I have been using them consistently for 6 years or so now. It's up to the individual to decide, whether they're psychologically addicted. Drinking coffee every day definitely does give you some kind of physiological addiction, and even psychological addiction too. So like drugs, things that are substances, like they can be addictive, but do people really is there stigma about like being addicted to coffee or something? No, not usually, especially not if it's just like, drinking it once a day or something. But plenty of people drink it all throughout the day, every day. And nobody still really complains so much about like being like addicted and like there's some kind of addict, right? So I just want to read your question one more time. You say that, how do you know if you're psychologically addicted or dependent on PEDs? You're a 38-year-old entrepreneur, and high dose test makes you 3 times more productive than when you're natural. My opinion on that is that you're using a supplement to help you achieve the things that you want to do with your life. You say it makes you 3 times more productive than when you're natural. You're an entrepreneur. Okay, well, a lot of people that, work high stress jobs, like in the Silicon Valley, like in computer industry, or executives of companies, they also use supplements to help them. Also salespeople, they also use supplements to help them work. Like, Like some take Adderall, others take Ritalin, others take oh man, it's slipping my head right now. It's slipping my head. Modafinil. Others take modafinil to help them, be able to do those jobs. And actually, when I used to be a door-to-door security, home security salesman, I took kratom when I was doing that too. When I'd be knocking on the doors doing that, because it made me be able to maintain a better mood while I was being rejected, knocking on people's doors. It made me just be able to just shrug it off like nothing had happened, and have a better mood, which made me be able to work better. And that helped me. That helped me do my living. So if you're using some kind of substance to help you make your living, that's not abnormal. That's most people who are at the top or who are really excelling use some kind of aid to help them. Whether that's coffee, whether that's modafinil, or Ritalin, or whether that's kratom, or whether it's testosterone, whatever, man. If you want to use something, just do it. It's up to you. And if it's not, directly causing negative things to happen in your life, where, it's, if you were honest with your grandma and your mom and dad about what you're doing, and, and you said, this is what I'm doing, and this is why, and your mom and dad and your grandma or something were like open-minded people, they didn't have they weren't rooted in only doing it one way, but they're really open-minded and wanted you to be successful, and you explained to them, really clearly, what you were doing and why, if you could feel comfortable doing that, basically, if you could feel comfortable doing that, telling the people who love you about what you're doing and why, if you can feel comfortable doing that, then I'd say that you're definitely not, psychologically addicted or dependent, and destroying your life by using these things. That's really a good gauge. Can you be honest and tell people who love you about what you're doing, and then feel confident about telling them, honestly about the substances that you're using to help you reach your goal and the dosages and stuff? If you can do that and feel good about it, or confident about it, telling the people that love you about that, people who care about you, then and not feel ashamed, then I don't think that what you're doing is a problem. I don't think it's something you need to worry about. I think it's a good thing for your life. Next question is from Nick, who says, "Brah, I got a little bit of gyno, nothing too crazy, or it's just even puffy nipples. Can Nolva solve this? If so, what would you do?" Yeah, a lot of people are really sensitive about gyno issues, and a lot of guys don't have gyno, but they think they do. On the internet, several years ago, I'm not sure if it still is. I think it probably still is, but it's been a thing. It's been a trend where people look at other guys, when they post pictures or on forums or something, people look at people's nipples, and if they're not cold and, small and hard, people will be like, "Oh, you have gyno." And that's not gyno, man. You get all these because people are already insecure about their bodies or whatever. And then you got all these people on the internet that, hate themselves. They see like a nipple that isn't, cold and hard. And then they start saying, "Oh, you're a gyno person. You have a breast." And then this person gets all self-conscious, because this guy, Nick, he says he's got a little bit of gyno, nothing too crazy. He thinks it might even just be puffy nipples. And yeah, that's exactly what I think. It's just, your nipple isn't a nipple that is hard all the time or something. Sometimes it can be slack, and obviously there's genetic things going on there. Some people's nipples will be more hard all the time than other people's nipples, or if they got their nipples pierced, that makes them always hard then, if they've ever had them pierced before. So if you're worried about if you had gyno, you can do this right now, okay? Take your forefinger, your pointer finger, and your thumb, and position them on the bottom and on the top of your nipple, and now press in with the tips of your fingers so that you can you're like pressing into your chest. And now try to grip that area like where your nipple is and like kind of behind the nipple and see what that feels like. And if you feel like serious, like lumpy, like frozen peas in there or like hard BBs and not just like, one or two, because there is a gland back there. Okay. It's not like you're going to touch your nipple and the area behind it and squeeze it and it's just going to be nothing back there. There is going to be something in there. So you're going to touch it. And if it's like, if there's just kind of like a tiny bit of like a harder tissue in there, and it's not big at all, but you can just feel that there's something in there. That's not gyno. That's your nipple breast gland. And you're born with that. Everybody's born with that. So that's not gyno. Don't worry about that. Okay. But if you do that same procedure and you feel like a significant amount of like frozen peas feeling or BBs or, it's like kind of rough and like something like that in there, it's, hard and you can feel like a significant lump, not something that is the size of, one or two frozen peas or one frozen pea or something like that. But there's something that is like, whoa, there's like something in here, man. Like there's something in there. Okay. That's gyno. Okay. That's gyno. But the average guy that thinks he has gyno and he feels in his nipple and he feels like there's a little something in there when you squeeze your nipple, that's not gyno. That's just the gland. You're born that way. Everyone has that to some degree. Some is bigger than others. But the gyno is actually when that gland that you can feel back there, when you can feel back there and you can say, oh yeah, there's a little something in there. I can barely kind of squeeze it, kind of grip it, but I can tell that there's something in there behind the nipple. That's the gland. Okay. Now, if that gland starts growing from using steroids and having high estrogen, high prolactin, high progesterone, and it starts growing, it turns into kind of like a golf ball or like a bottle cap size, like the bottle cap on a soda bottle or something like that. And if you're feeling, that kind of feeling like, whoa, there's a thing back here and it's hard and it's like the size of a bottle cap on a soda bottle or something, that's gyno formation. That's the breast tissue was growing more. It was starting to develop. And that's what that is. But these guys, if you go outside and, it's a hot day and you got, a nipple that doesn't have a point on it or something, it's kind of like a soft skin there. That's not gyno. That's just genetically what your nipples look like. If you want to take a photo, then do the way the pros do, and, give your nipple a little flick or something if you're really worried about it. Okay. Cause that, believe it or not, they actually do that kind of shit, give it a little, somebody get their finger out and flick that fucking nipple and then, take that fucking picture, something like that. Okay. That's totally unnecessary, to be worrying about this kind of stuff. Even myself, like I definitely do not have gyno, I've been using roids for a long time. But when I was a young teenager, when I was like 15 years old, I remember like kind of being like a little bit like insecure about my nipples or something. So I think that is something that a lot of guys go through. Nowadays I know this is kind of a weird thing to say, but nowadays when other bodybuilders see my chest and, sometimes they, I've had a comment like, oh, like, it looks like, you have the kind of nipple that looks like it doesn't have gyno. You have like a small dime sized nipple. How did you keep it like that while using steroids or something? So I really do not have gyno. But when I was like 15 years old, I noticed that, my nipple wasn't, always at all times exactly the way that it would look like on a fitness model in a magazine. And so like maybe like if I would go outside to like mow my lawn or something with my shirt off because, I was getting, turning into an adolescent. So I kind of wanted to, have my shirt off or something and mow the lawn. I might feel a little bit insecure, like about like, oh, like what if my nipple is like, not hard or something, so if it would look kind of flat, I might be like flicking it or like give it a little pinch or something real quick. But I was like a little bit insecure about that at the time. So I think it's very normal for guys to feel, worry that they have gyno or feel a little bit insecure about their nipples. Another thing is that I've had so many people contact me echoing a similar question to what Nick said. Bro, I got a little bit of gyno, nothing too crazy, or it's just even puffy nipples. Can Nova solve this? If so, what would you do? I've got tons of guys that contact me saying, with similar messages. And, a lot of times, they'll send me pictures and they don't have gyno. A lot of times they have that, they have some body fat to lose. And, the nipple area is, an area that is sensitive to estrogen. And so it's an area where fat accumulates on that area. For the majority of people, not all people, but for the majority of people, fat accumulates on that nipple area more so than the rest of the body. Estrogen influences where, certain areas of the body, just like they're more sensitive to estrogen than other areas of the body. Just like certain areas of the body are more sensitive to androgens and testosterone than others, like the shoulders, the traps, the upper chest, the back. Those can be areas that are more, more affected by steroids than other areas. And then, like the hips and the nipple area can be more affected by estrogen as far as like fat deposition. So if you've been on steroids, that means that you've probably had, high estrogen levels from time to time. Fat can be accumulated in that nipple area. And, so sometimes they'll have kind of a puffy area going on right there or something, or it will look a little bit slack or loose right in that nipple area. And that can almost always be solved by just losing weight, losing fat. If you really got to, screw with this, or if you need to shrink something in your nipple, there's an article on my website, bodybuilderinthailand.com. It's right on the front page. It says how to shrink and get rid of gyno, and I give my advice on that. I really cover like all of it and like exactly how to do it, and like whether it's from Tren, whether it's from Deca, whether it's from testosterone or any other drug, exactly what you need to do and the dosages and the compounds that you need in order to shrink and get rid of gyno if you have it. So I know the website for this podcast is steroidspodcast.com, but on my personal website, bodybuilderinthailand.com, on the homepage, there is that article, how to shrink and get rid of gyno, that can really help you. And just to say, one thing is that, Nolvadex does work. Nolvadex is really good for starving the nipple tissue of estrogen, because it fills up the estrogen receptor at the nipple directly and then makes it so that the estrogen can't bind to that tissue. So if you do have a bit of a lump back there, or if you just, you can't get over your nipples, you don't like your nipples, you can experiment with Nolvadex and see if that can help you. All right, next question, 20 to 40 milligrams per day, Nolva. Next question, Fat Muscle Fuck asks, what about T3 on a bulk? I read that if you eat the metabolic burn, you'll grow faster due to faster muscle protein synthesis. Any experience with that? Yeah, I do have experience with that. I experimented with thyroid hormones, really quickly. The day I took my first ever testosterone shot, I also took thyroid hormone. So I don't like thyroid hormones. One of the main things that thyroid hormones do is they affect your heartbeat. So there's a direct effect of thyroid hormones on the way that your heart works. On the rhythm and on the beat, the hardness with which it pounds. T3 and thyroid hormones directly work on that. So most people, when they start using thyroid hormones, they notice like weird little things like with their heart. Some people don't. Some people like, it's probably like more do than don't, like maybe like 60-40, 60% do, 40% don't. Notice that, some kind of side effects on their heart from using thyroid hormones like T3. Another one is it gives you some shortness of breath because every cell in your body requires more nutrients, more oxygen, and then you'll get hotter easier and like overheating easier, and then like out of breath. It also makes you weaker. And T3 is so powerful at, burning up calories and everything that, even if you're on like fucking Tren, if you just like go and add in a bunch of T3, like 50 micrograms or 75 micrograms or 100 micrograms of T3, bye-bye to any anabolic response or muscle building response that you had. It's so powerful at, catabolizing tissue, breaking down tissue, expending energy. It's so powerful at doing that it will overpower any kind of steroids or performance enhancing drugs that you're on if you take too much. So I just don't really think it's the best bodybuilding drug. Yeah, it does help people lose fat. It does help people lose weight and get ripped, especially like after somebody has been dieting for a while, after somebody's been dieting for like 2 months or something, and, their body's really starting to get an adaptive response to the dieting. I mean, we all know, like, if you've ever dieted before, like, you're not as hot anymore, and, it seems like you're more calm and your heart is beating slower. That's because your body makes adaptations, and one of the big adaptations is reducing thyroid levels to prevent you from having weight loss and to conserve energy. So then on that person, if you add in, some thyroid hormones and some T3, then that can really make the dieting process easier. But it does have some potential for those side effects, even at low dosages, like 25 micrograms of T3 per day, can have those side effects with the heart and all the other ones that I was saying. Or some people use T4, and so they'll use like 200 micrograms of T4 per day. And T4 is more mild. It doesn't have quite as strong of effects because it's a prohormone and it has to be converted by the body into T3 in order to be active. So your body can kind of regulate how much is being converted. So T4 is more forgiving. As far as, it can increase muscle protein synthesis because it increases the amount of energy that every cell is using. In practical experience, like in theory, that could work, but in practical experience, it doesn't make you gain more muscle to take T3. T3 is a catabolic hormone. It makes you weaker and not building muscle as much. So I definitely would not use T3 on a bulk. The only, if you want to experiment with it, you can. Or experiment with using T3 on a bulk so that you can eat more junk food or something. I mean, that's kind of the reasons why people would, actually benefit from it, but not in a way of like, oh, I gained more muscle because I used T3. Because, T3 is so powerful at catabolizing tissue that it can make your steroids even ineffective. Like, just like that. Even strong steroids like Tren. You add in the T3 and like, boom, you're no longer anabolic. Okay, next question is from Desley. Sustanon stopped working. He says, lab tested Sustanon 250 milligrams, making me feel bottomed out after 7 or 8 days. I wanted to take 1 shot a week for my cruise, but it just started to feel shitty without injecting twice a week. I would feel a somewhat peak, and then 4 to 5 days later, erectile dysfunction. Yeah. Sustanon will do that. So what Sustanon is it's 4 esters of testosterone combined into 1 oil. So you guys know esters of testosterone control how long it's released. There's like an ester is like enanthate or cypionate or propionate, okay? Those are esters, and they make it so that the steroid that you inject gets released into the bloodstream at variable rates. How long is it going to be active inside you? So something like a propionate, it peaks a couple hours after you inject it, and then it lasts in your body for about 2 days, and then it's gone. Something like enanthate peaks 24 hours after you inject it, and then it lasts in your body for about a week, and then it starts, going down pretty quickly until about 2 or 3 weeks later, it's completely gone out of your system. So it's a much slower acting drug. And so with Sustanon, what Sustanon is a combination of different esters of testosterone. You got testosterone propionate, you got testosterone phenylpropionate, you got testosterone isocaproate, and you got testosterone, what was the other one? Isocaproate, and then decanoate, testosterone decanoate. That's the final 4th component of testosterone. So Each one of those esters, propionate, phenylpropionate, isocaproate, and decanoate, they all have different releasing times into the bloodstream. So the isocaproate and the decanoate esters, they're like more long-acting esters. And then the propionate and the phenylpropionate are quick-acting esters. And so they did this because they wanted to give people a testosterone that would be able to, like you said, be injected every 7 to 8 days. But really, it just doesn't work good. This is common, what you're talking about. After 4 or 5 days, needing another shot of Sustanon. That's not uncommon for people who are actually using these things and having experience with them. It's typical for 3 or 4 or 5 days after a Sustanon injection to need another one, or to start feeling like you're going down. So if you want to only inject, once a week, you should use enanthate or cypionate. They're longer esters, and they have a more smoothness to them. The Sustanon is going to have those 4 different drugs all peaking at different times, and it's going to be a more like roller coaster, and it just kind of like exits out of your system. It's seemingly quicker. Enanthate or cypionate, definitely you can just do 1 injection per week and be fine. But feeling shitty 4 to 5 days after doing Sustanon, that's pretty standard if you don't, take another injection. Another thing you could do if you are really wanting to limit injections is you could take testosterone undecanoate, which is brand name by Bayer. It's called Nebido. And Nebido is really good because it doesn't start coming down until 3 weeks after your injection. So you get a relatively stable level where each day, somewhere between 12 and, if you take 1,000 milligrams in one shot of Nebido, then for the next 3 weeks, each day you'll have something like 12 to 20 milligrams of testosterone each day released into your blood from that single shot of 1,000 milligrams of testosterone undecanoate. So that's great for doing a TRT thing and being able to take a low amount of injections. So that would be, if you did that 1,000 milligram shot every 3 weeks, that would be, something like, 300 milligrams or so of testosterone actually getting into you each week. So a little bit more than the Sustanon 250. But you'd have way smoother levels and have the low injections. Then with cypionate and enanthate, if you aren't injecting those once per week, you're going to start feeling that same kind of crash that you felt from the Sustanon after 4 to 5 days. Steroids are meant to be injected pretty frequently. I used to inject every day. Back when I was taking the most steroids that I've taken, like if you look on my Instagram, Bodybuilder in Thailand, there's pictures of me like looking my best. And, back in those days, yeah, I was injecting every day. Usually I'd take like a 3cc syringe every day. And you hear a lot of bodybuilders talking about that, like, oh, well, I wanted to like fill the syringe or something like that. That's like a common thing that guys, I'm not saying it's a good thing. And I definitely did not feel healthy when I was doing that. I did not feel healthy. Okay. Like I could tell like, dude, I'm like taking stuff and this is like too much. Like it's not healthy. But I wanted to do it because I had a certain goal. And I wanted to be able to like show people like, I know what I'm talking about, look, I've been able to build this and, so that I could put my money where my mouth was a little bit, with talking about this stuff and, being able to show the, my own personal physique somewhat, to be able to validate some of the things that I say, or the experience that I've had. So that's why I was doing that, taking a 3cc shot every day. And yeah, I definitely felt like it was abusive and, I don't like doing it, but, it definitely created stable blood levels. Next question is from Fred. Do you recommend only Proviron for lowering estrogen for test Sustanon 250 every 5 days? My estrogen was a bit high. Thanks. Yeah. Yep. Like we were just talking about in the last one, you might want to change your Sustanon 250 to like every 3 or 4 days rather than 5 days, or split the shot and only take like a half cc, every other day or something like that, just to make yourself feel good. I do not recommend only Proviron for lowering estrogen. So I've tried to use it for that purpose, and I've tried to use Masteron for that purpose too. My first Trenbolone cycle, I'd been reading a lot of GH15 stuff. And so because I had been reading that, they say don't use Anti Estrogen, just use Masteron. So that's what I was doing my first Tren cycle. And, I was just stopped using any AI and just started using Masteron. I think I was taking like 600 milligrams of Masteron and Anthate per week or something. And I thought, okay, now I'm like immune to getting like gyno symptoms or something. But then, I started feeling like my shirt against my chest, or I'd like run into a doorway or something, where just stuff, where my chest would brush against something, and it would be stuff that I would normally never notice. But, I'd all of a sudden be like, ouch, or something like that, put the shirt on, or just like walking and like my nipple is giving me like this sensation. I'm like, kind of like, ouch, that kind of like hurts having my shirt resting against my nipple or something. Or I'd like walk through a doorway and, maybe I'd kind of like brush the edge of it or something like that. Stuff that I would normally not even notice. And I'd be like, oh, damn, my nipple freaking like, there's a deep pain in there, man. That hurts. Shit. I realized, like, dude, this isn't doing shit. I'm starting to, get gyno right here. And so then I went, back to anti-estrogens, and I took since I was on Tren, I had to take a cabergoline too. I think I was using pramipexole actually at the time instead of cabergoline. And so I took those, and, everything went back to normal, within a few hours. So that's an experience of, using Proviron and Masteron are basically the same thing. One's just injectable and one's oral. For using those kinds of steroids to prevent estrogen. They only do it for like the really, really moderate, or people who really do not produce much estrogen. If you're a person that, normally doesn't really need to use an AI on a cycle, an anti-estrogen, then like, if you use some Proviron or some Masteron, like that'll probably like make your cycle better or something. If you're the type of guy who doesn't need any AI ever, because you don't get estrogen symptoms, your body doesn't produce estrogen out of testosterone, then you could use Proviron or Masteron and like get more of a better look or something like that. Or, have some extra low estrogen or something, but it's so mild. It's so mild. Like if you have a high estrogen symptom and then you go and take like 100 milligrams of Proviron or something, like that isn't going to do shit. Like, for example, if you're getting gyno and you have like swollen, sensitive, puffy nipples that are itching, okay, and you go take 100 milligrams of Proviron and expect that to do anything, it's not going to do shit. 24 hours later, it's going to be the exact same, or maybe even worse because your estrogen keeps on rising. The way that Proviron and Masteron attack, the way that they attack the estrogen is they block the receptors, and because they're such strong androgens, they change the ratio of like androgen to estrogen in your body, and it just simply is so weak and not strong that it doesn't work. And Proviron was one of the first steroids invented. It was Masteron is the chemical name of Proviron, and it was invented in the 1930s, just after testosterone got invented. Testosterone was discovered. Right after testosterone was discovered, Proviron was made like almost immediately. And, bodybuilders couldn't use high dosages of testosterone and didn't use high dosages of testosterone for the most part. Powerlifters did because they didn't care about what they looked like, and a lot of them had gyno. But most bodybuilders did not, in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, even up into the 80s until the late 80s, early 90s, when Nolvadex started being popularized in bodybuilding, and then also aromatase inhibitors like Arimidex, Letrozole, Exemestane in the early 90s, late 80s were invented, and then allowed people to be able to significantly suppress estrogen levels. That's when testosterone, as such a powerful bodybuilding drug, then became popular in bodybuilding, because then it was able to be used, while keeping estrogen low. Whereas Proviron, something that had been around, and Masteron, something that had been around forever, was not able to do that. for the majority of people. Next question is from D. Question for the podcast. I've been running trend cycles for the past 2 years without any issues relating to side effects. Nothing too crazy. 300 milligrams per week split into 3 injections along with 3x 250 milligrams Sustanon. So 750 milligrams Sustanon, testosterone per week with 300 milligrams of Trenbolone per week. That's a good cycle. That's a really good cycle that'll give really good gains. So he's been doing these cycles for the last 2 years without side effects. However, all of a sudden he started to lactate, and he is assuming that this is an elevated prolactin issue. My question is, what are some of the dangers of having high prolactin levels? Would running cabergoline be the correct course of action to remedy the situation? Yeah, running cabergoline would be the correct course of action to remedy the situation. You know, you always want to err on the low side with cabergoline because it has some dangers of using high dosages or using it for a long time. Some dangers with heart complications. So, but it's relatively safe in low dosages. So you want to start out just using something like 0.25 milligrams, 0.25 milligrams, 2 or 3 times per week. And then, if that doesn't work, maxing out at around 0.5 milligrams, 2 or 3 times per week with cabergoline. And if that's not going to solve your issues, then you kind of got to, reduce your steroid use or use other steroids or something. With the lactation, yeah, that's pretty normal. With Trenbolone, usually pretty much everyone on Trenbolone, whether you're using cabergoline or not, or whether you're using Anti Estrogen or not, pretty much everyone that uses Trenbolone can squeeze their nipple and have something come out, have some kind of brown, gross substance kind of come out like a liquid. The reason for this is that Trenbolone is a jack of all spades hormone. It actually attaches to every hormone receptor. So it attaches to androgen receptors. It attaches to progesterone receptors. It's actually made from progesterone, okay? So when you take Trenbolone, like, you are going to have some progesterone stimulation. And progesterone is what makes women be able to start nursing and breastfeeding their babies. So that's why everyone that uses Trenbolone does get some of that lactation, especially if they squeeze their nipple. Some kind of like brown or yellow shit, like water stuff comes out. And it's usually kind of stinky too, it's really gross. So you really can't just not have that happen at all. Usually running any steroids though at all, if you really squeeze that gland in your nipple and really kind of like milk it or something, you can kind of get something out of your nipple. You can get some kind of liquid substance out of your nipple. Most steroid users know this. If they really squeeze that gland in their nipple and kind of milk, milk the teat of the cow, something like that with that gland behind their nipple, and really squeeze that out, something kind of comes out of their nipple, some kind of liquid, brown, black, yellowish liquid comes out, just a little bit for mostly anybody who uses steroids, but then especially the people that are using Trenbolone and Deca, because those raise prolactin and they directly stimulate progesterone receptors, which those are the receptors that make women be able to breastfeed. So it does that. It does that. If you are only having the lactation issues and you're not having like pain in your nipple and sensitivity there, and your sex drive is fine, then it's probably better, Ben, if you just ignore it and do not use cabergoline, because like I said, cabergoline is not something you want to use unless you need to use it because of health concerns, and this is pretty normal. So if you're not getting gyno, then it's not really an issue. And if your sex drive is fine, and it's like, you got a little something, look at this magic trick. Look at this magic trick, pull up your shirt and you give a little spray or something, and it goes in a few directions or something. You can spray your friends while they're bench pressing in the gym. All right, next question. Zane asks, Winstrol Dbol effects, common bodybuilding dosages, synergy with other AAS. Yeah, Winstrol works really good with testosterone. Winstrol is like super good with testosterone. It reduces SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, a lot. So it's really potent at making testosterone more potent. Winstrol is. Because it makes more of the testosterone be active in the blood. The sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, it causes that to be reduced significantly, which means that more testosterone is not then bound up and inactivated by the SHBG, and it's more active and able to do things in your body. So that's Winstrol, the tablets, or Winstrol, the injections. Winstrol Depot's more, it's stronger per milligram than the tablets. So the injection of oral steroids like Winstrol, dianabol, Anavar, Anadrol, etc. When you inject them, they're like 30% or so. That's a rough number, okay? But they're like 30% or so stronger per milligram. And that's the main difference. And then the other difference is that some of those compounds, and also depending on your own body's physiology, they can make, when it goes through the liver, some metabolites can be made. So instead of just getting the full steroid directly into your bloodstream, like it would be in an injection, sometimes, depending on your own body, you can have it go through the liver, and then some of it can get destroyed and made into some other hormones instead of the steroid that you're actually taking, called metabolites. These little these hormones that are made after they've been like digested or broken down by your body a bit. Those are called metabolites. And so you just get with the injection, you get a more direct and more exact or potent influx of the hormone directly into your body. So that's Winstrol Depot versus Winstrol tablets. Winstrol Depot's fairly dangerous, though. A lot of infections that people get or abscesses come from Winstrol Depot, because it's basically the way that they make Winstrol Depot, the injection, is they put sterile water or bacteriostatic water in a vial, and then they put the crystalline Winstrol stanozolol powder into the water, and they combine those two together. And it doesn't mix so well. So when you get the bottle or the ampule or whatever, you got to like really shake it hard before you draw it into the syringe and inject it, because you got to get all those crystals into solution in the water, because it all falls to the bottom. It's not an even spread throughout the water like it would be with a steroid and oil. And then the water also, it doesn't have the resistance to bacteria and stuff that oil has. So it's more likely to cause infections. Many infections that people have, and abscesses, things like that, are caused from injectable Winstrol. So for me, I've used injectable Winstrol, yeah, and I've never had an infection from it, but I have had, like pain from it, like post-injection pain, where, that shit hurts like fuck, with pain and some swelling in the area. But now I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like Winstrol Depot. I just like the tablets. Next question is from Kiev. I ran out of AI mid-cycle, 750 testananthate weekly and 25 milligrams dianabol daily, because my shipment got delayed due to the holidays. Should I continue to pin and take the Dbol, or wait until the AI comes in? It's going to be about 5 days till my AI comes in. It depends on, how much you aromatize. Personally, I wouldn't do it, because for me, I would run into problems, and because I aromatize significantly, I would wait. But if you're a guy that knows that you don't really even need your AI, and you can wait 5 days with no AI, then go ahead and take it. But the main thing that I would worry about would be, like, if you get into a situation where you're getting estrogen effects and like your nipples swollen and it's like itching and you don't have anything that you could do about it, and you're just waiting on that mail and you don't know exactly when that thing is going to come in. I don't want to be in that situation, and that's why I wouldn't take it. The next question is from Rich. I'm on TRT testcypionate 120 milligrams and Deca Durabolin 60 milligrams per week. And he says it's because he has a herniated disc. I feel way better since I started 9 weeks ago. I had pretty low free test when I started, and he was 40 years old. Now he's starting to feel a little bit like itchy in his right nipple, like it got irritated. Does that mean I need to lower the dose, or do I need to take with a TIT forever an estrogen blocker? Yeah, so there's a couple things you can do. You could lower the dose and see if that helped. But it's, I think that what you should do is use an estrogen blocker as needed when you get symptoms. So anybody that's taken TRT usually is going to have some estrogen levels raising a little bit if they don't use anything to prevent estrogen. That's usually just the way it works with injectable testosterone. But you're also using Deca Durabolin, so you might be having some kind of prolactin or progesterone response as well. And you don't need to be using the estrogen blocker forever, because you said that you've been on it 9 weeks and you just started to get some symptoms of high estrogen levels or female hormone levels in your nipple. Basically, the way that I always recommend people to take the Anti Estrogen and the things like cabergoline and stuff, because it's true, the Anti Estrogen and the cabergoline, these anti-hormone drugs, they're not good for your health. They're not like insanely bad for your health, but it's better not to be using them, or using them sparingly if you can. So my suggestion and the way that I use them is that I use them as needed when I get symptoms. And also the guys that I do training with, that's how I recommend that they do it, and they like using it like that. So basically, if you had Arimidex or Exemestane or Letrozole, if you had that on hand, you could take a tablet right now, or even Nolvadex, and that's gonna most likely make your symptoms go away. But since you're on Deca Durabolin too, if it didn't, then the next step would be taking a tablet of cabergoline and seeing if that made it go away, in addition to taking the anti-estrogen at the same time. So you said it took you 9 weeks before you got those symptoms. I mean, if you got to, let's say they come back quicker next time, and it's like every 5 weeks or every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks. If that's all if you got to take an anti-estrogen or an anti-prolactin, once a month or something, like, that's nothing, man. That's nothing. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, or thinking like, oh, like I'm getting all stacked up on all these meds that I got to take forever. I just, if you got a little bit of symptoms in your nipple, like, obviously you don't want that there. And it kind of affects your mind too, usually, when you've got those high female hormone levels. Just as symptoms arise, just, I got a little estrogen symptom here, so I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to take an Exemestane tablet, and then hopefully that clears you up. But if it doesn't, you're like, oh, I'm still feeling some, after 24 hours or so, you're like, I'm still feeling something, I don't feel like it's going away the way that I wanted it to. Then, you can take 0.25 milligrams of cabergoline, and, the two of those together, pretty much that guarantees that it will fix your problem. Okay, the next question is from Clued, who asks, will 2IU's farm-grade growth hormone ran 12 weeks prior to a physique competition give a more 3D full look? Should you run growth hormone through a competition or cut out before due to water retention? Yeah, 2IU's farm-grade growth hormone will give a more 3D full look, and that look will be apparent in your body 2 or 3 or 4 days after starting. It's a very quick process, and it's definitely a change that is noticeable in the look of your muscles. But growth hormone does cause water retention as well. But that's, the water retention that it causes that is significant and outside the muscle in the skin, that's more like above 4 IUs, above 3 or 4 IUs. So like in that 5 to 10 IUs and up range, that's when you're looking at oh, I'm retaining a lot of water, all over my body, in my skin, not just in my muscles. So if you've got farm grade growth hormone, it's only 2 IUs, you definitely might not experience any water retention in your skin. And there are guys who do competitions And they run the growth hormone through the competition. They do not go off the growth hormone for the competition, and they do it for that specific look, that 3D full look that you're talking about. But, at the same time, those guys usually are sacrificing some sharpness when they do that, because there is some water retention to growth hormone. So other times they just will try to use a diuretic to get around that. But it's a personal decision. People do it. Like you said, like running it for a competition for 12 weeks, and not cutting it out, the 2 IUs. People do that. But then it's more common not to do that. But there are people who do it. So you can experiment. Lamb guard. Lamb guard. What nutrition? He asks, what nutrition should I have when starting my first cycle? And how big of a surplus for a bulk? Thanks for killing it. Yeah, when you start your first cycle, you need to just eat instinctively, because your body goes nuts when you're a virgin to male hormones. When you're a steroid virgin and you put like any male hormones in you for that first cycle, Jesus, like the first 2 weeks or the first 4 weeks, like your body responds to it like no other. And you don't even really know what your metabolism is going to do. So my advice for guys starting on their first cycle is always just to eat as you feel like you need to eat. So when you feel hungry and you feel like you need to eat, just eat. And for those first couple weeks, let the steroids do their thing, and then, just eat instinctively. Give them the fuel that they need in order to do their thing. Your metabolism is changing. The way that you process food is changing. And, you need to eat. You need to, for that first cycle, you need to not be, restricting your food or something. You need to be taking advantage of that steroid virgin status, and, just letting them have the raw materials they need to do some things, because steroids do not build muscle on their own, okay? They alter the way that you process food, and because of that, you can build more muscle. So what steroids do is they make it so that your body does different things with the food. It has different preferences for where the energy from that food goes. And it makes it so that the food can be directed towards the right cells in your body. The muscle cells, the skeletal muscle cells, more directed there than usual. So make sure to get that food in on your first cycle. It's important. And you'll never get that virgin steroid feeling again, where it's like, oh my gosh, this stuff is just so freaking strong. As long as you're running real performance enhancers, you can't just run 500 milligrams per week and expect to feel like that. But if you run some performance enhancers along with it, like Tren or like Dbol or Anadrol or something, or Winstrol, then you're gonna mega feel those steroids on that first cycle when you're a virgin. Okay. The next question is from Antera, who asks, what's the best method to control and maintain low water weight while on cycle? Using low testosterone dosages, using low growth hormone dosages, or not using growth hormone, and then letting the anabolic drugs do their thing. So 500 milligrams or 700 milligrams of testosterone per week, in that area, that's the limit, where if you take more testosterone than that, you're going to have some unavoidable water retention. And it's just from your body taking up more total nutrients, more total electrolytes, more sodium. Your body just starts hoarding everything that goes in. That can be somewhat remedied by reducing carbohydrates. But generally, if you're looking to maintain and control water weight while on cycle, you're going to want to be, not using testosterone above 700 milligrams per week. Not using big dosages of growth hormone. That's a big one. Or not using growth hormone altogether. And then relying on things like Winstrol, Anavar, Anadrol, primobolan, equipoise, stuff like that to build your muscle, to build your strength, build your physique, to get those really high levels of steroids that you need in your body. Because, as we've talked about before, if you want to be like jacked as fuck and like one of the, biggest guys at most muscular guys at pretty much any gym you go to, where people, they see you and they're like, that guy is, he's jacked as fuck. You got to be taking, almost everybody who is looking like that is using between 1.5 grams to 2.5 or 3 grams of total anabolic steroids per week. That's like a general rule for getting that look. That's what they're averaging in their cycles. So, yep. You gotta. Since you're not going to use a lot of testosterone, you got to fill it in. You got to fill it in with other stuff, other drugs that aren't as healthy. Since you don't want to use, you don't want to have much water retention. Okay, the next question is from To The. He says, just started listening to your podcast. Love it. I had a question about a cutting cycle. I've only done the one I'm on now, which is 600 milligrams Testi and 600 milligrams of Deca, 50 milligrams a day of Anadrol. That's a good cycle. But it ends in 4 weeks. And you notice this guy too, 600, and then the 50 Anadrol, that's 350. So that actually adds up to 1,550 milligrams of anabolics total per week, which puts this guy in the range where he's using the kind of cycles and dosages that are going to get him jacked as fuck. He's going to, have the ability to be, one of the biggest guys in every gym he goes to, and people are going to be thinking like, wow, this dude's fucking jacked. That's like the magic dosage, you've got to be having your total anabolics add up, for almost everybody, to at least 1.5 grams per week on average for your cycles, especially if you're not using Tren. So he says he's using that cycle, but it ends in 4 weeks. So I want to start cutting. I was thinking about 1,000 milligrams of Test E, 500 milligrams of Masteron, 500 milligrams of Equipoise, and add Clen towards the end. Any thoughts? Yeah. I probably wouldn't use the Masteron. Masteron goes good with Tren because Tren hurts a lot of people's sex drive. And so, they'll use the Masteron because Masteron, has a really increased sex drive effect to it. But it definitely does not fill your muscles up at all. I'm talking zero. It's totally a cosmetic drug. It does make you a little bit stronger because it makes like the same as Proviron, it lowers SHBG. So then like the testosterone and all the other hormones are not going to be inactivated and unable to do their job because of SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, binding to those steroids and inactivating them. So that's the main reason for Masteron. So for that reason, you could keep the Masteron in there. But if you're thinking the Masteron is going to like make you look like ripped, or like burn fat, it doesn't do that. And it doesn't have the effect of like filling your muscles up either. Like something like, I'm sure since your experience with Anadrol, you do see that effect. And even with something like Winstrol, you do see like, oh, my muscles are like way fuller, while I'm using this, I have a different look to my body. Masteron kind of reduces your water a little bit and makes everything look a little bit more like dense and smaller and compact, more dense. That's what it looks like. Puts a ton of oil on your skin, really thick oil on your skin, that makes you look shiny and increases your sex drive a ton. But it doesn't really have like much of an anabolic or fat burning effect at all. So if you wanted to use something, that would help you with the fat burning, instead of the Masteron, if you took that out and instead ran like 2 or 3 IUs of growth hormone per day, that would really help with your fat loss. And it would directly help with your fat loss. Or you could take the Masteron out and, you could put, instead of 500 milligrams Masteron, you could put primobolan, and then that would also help with your cutting. It fills your muscles out, makes you a bit stronger, and helps with nutrient partitioning and helps maintain your muscle without losing any while you're cutting. And then the Clen that you were talking about adding in there and the Equipoise, those are both good. The Clen, it's a really effective fat burner, especially with cardio. For me, I feel like I feel like the clen really shines when you're using it with cardio. So in my experience, and in the experience that I've had with observing others in real life, it's the guys who combine the clenbuterol with the cardio that get the really good effects from the clen, especially fasted cardio in the morning with the clen. It really burns fat well like that. Okay, next question is from Jan, who says, question for the podcast, how big of a difference will 250 milligrams of testosterone per week year-round make for a natural in his 30s? How much muscle mass built in a year and boost in energy? And what do you think of finasteride as a hair loss agent on cycle? Yeah, so 250 milligrams per week will make a difference. You're a natural dude in your 30s and you're thinking about, using a little bit of testosterone, which this dosage that you're talking about is testosterone replacement therapy. It's the same dosage that a doctor would prescribe you. They prescribe in America for testosterone replacement therapy, the dosages that they prescribe based on your doctor and based on you, your body, what it does to you and stuff. It will be anywhere between 100 milligrams, usually 125 milligrams, half cc. Sometimes they have a 100 milligram way to get it there, to get to that level. So 100 milligrams, 125 milligrams, up to 400 milligrams per week of testosterone. That's the range that doctors prescribe testosterone replacement therapy for in America, which is year-round. They never, the person never goes off. So when you ask, is it okay to do this year-round? Yeah, it's okay to do it because it's the same dosage that doctors use. It's the middle of the range for what doctors use for TRT at a common dosage. And it will make a difference in your body, but it's not going to be a big difference. Like, you'll notice an increased sex drive. You'll notice some slight changes in your personality, more assertiveness, maybe a little bit more indifferent to those around you or the feelings of those people around you. Maybe a little bit more like suspicion about other people and their intentions, stuff like that. And then you'll also have some more strength in the gym. You'll be able to gain some more muscle. But we're talking about really light, moderate amounts. If you go a year on this 250 testosterone and then you look back, to where you were 1 year prior, before you were on it, then you're going to see the difference. But if you just, keep doing what you're doing and add in 250 milligrams of testosterone and then look back, after 3 months or something, you're not going to notice a big difference. You're probably going to notice some difference. But it's not going to be wow, this really changed shit for me. But after a year, you'll be able to see getting on the testosterone, that really made a difference for me. So, taking 250 milligrams of test per week. I don't think that using finasteride is a good idea. You're not using really high levels of test. 250 milligrams puts most people at, the very top end of the normal range for testosterone levels, or maybe a little bit higher than the top end, just barely higher than the top natural testosterone normal range. And usually that's not a problem for hair loss. For those who are really genetically predisposed to hair loss and they're really worried about it, they need to not use testosterone though, in general, because testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, its metabolite, are what cause hair loss. And finasteride makes it so that your body doesn't produce dihydrotestosterone. But dihydrotestosterone is the chemical that gives you sex drive. It's the brain chemical. And it's also the chemical that, makes your penis be able to work and makes you a man, makes you grow your beard or whatever. So if you don't have that, you're going to feel like shit. That's the brain chemical. Testosterone works in your muscles, but it doesn't work in your brain. Dihydrotestosterone, the metabolite of testosterone, works in the muscles. So you got to have that in your body. And if you take finasteride, you're directly inhibiting that, preventing testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, from being created from testosterone. So you're not going to have the brain chemical or the hormone that you need to make your penis work anymore. So I don't recommend using finasteride unless you got like cancer of your prostate or something. I mean, that's finasteride and dutasteride. That's pretty much what they should be used for, is, shrinking prostate cancer and stuff like that. I don't really believe in that for hair loss. If you want to use steroids and hair loss is a huge concern to you, then just use Deca Durabolin, Anavar, and growth hormone. Because if you can, Deca Durabolin, we've talked about this before, it has a metabolite called dihydronandrolone that can support your sex drive if it's used without testosterone. And then Anavar, it does not produce hair loss either for the vast majority, and growth hormone does not produce hair loss either. It actually increases the speed at which your hair grows. So if you're on growth hormone, you'll notice that you need to get like haircuts more often and stuff like that. Growth hormone makes it, if you get cut, the cut heals quicker. The hair grows quicker on your head. The hair grows quicker on your body, on your arms, on your legs. Everything is quicker. Everything is growing on growth hormone. So that's probably a good thought for somebody who's really concerned about their hair loss, like Jen. All right, the final question for today is from Nicholas, who says, thoughts on doing ROIDS subcutaneously. I've read a lot lately about people being prescribed testosterone replacement therapy subcutaneously, so maybe gear could work. Obviously, a 3cc sub-Q in one go would be a bad idea, but could you split your weekly dose into 7 or even 14 and pin subcutaneously daily or twice daily? Could this help stabilize hormone levels, mimicking the body's natural production? Okay, the body's natural testosterone production is like up and down spikes all day. It's totally not a stable level. So your testicles, whenever they get, whenever the level of the estrogen starts to go down, your hypothalamus, it detects that lower estrogen level, and then it starts producing GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, which then stimulates your pituitary gland, which then starts sending out luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which then stimulate your testicles, Sertoli and Leydig cells to start producing sperm and testosterone. Okay, and then once the sperm and testosterone is once the testosterone is in your system, then the aromatase enzyme starts converting some of that testosterone into estrogen. And so then the estrogen levels start to rise up, and then your hypothalamus detects that, and it says, okay, shut off the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Shut off this whole process to the hypothalamus making the pituitary gland do stuff, which makes the testicles do stuff. Shut off the process. And then you stop making the testosterone. And then later during the day, when the estrogen level starts to come down again, then your hypothalamus says, hey, estrogen level's coming down. We're going to start releasing gonadotropin releasing hormone again. And then that makes the pituitary gland do its thing, and then makes the testicles make more testosterone. It's not like the testicles, it's on a feedback loop. The testicles aren't just producing like testosterone all day long at a normal rate. It's up and down all day, depending on the situation. Things like even like your posture and like your mood can affect when your body starts releasing testosterone during the day. So stable testosterone levels are totally unnatural, just to let you know. But what you want to have is testosterone levels that are never, dipping low. You never want to have them dip low. So for guys who are doing TRT, they talk about subcutaneous injections. That's like kind of like a fad lately. And basically, when you put that oil into your fat, you pinch like your stomach near your belly button, and then in the flesh that you have between your fingers, your thumb and the rest of your fingers, you stick the needle in there, into that flesh, into the fat, and you put the oil in there. And then in order for the body to get the hormone into the bloodstream, it has to absorb it from the fat, and the fat doesn't have a direct blood supply to it like the muscle does. So it takes a long time, and so that hormone, that oil, and the hormone that you put in your fat, it's like leaking out of there and being absorbed very slowly, like over weeks. And so yes, it produces a super stable, slow release hormone doing it like that. But the thing is that when you put it into your fat, it really takes like weeks for your body to digest it. And so if you feel the area, a week later or something, and you've done like a cc, like 1 cc of oil steroids into your fat, it will be there. A lump will be there in your fat, and you'll be able to feel it for like 2 or 3 weeks before it goes away. So I've tried it. I've tried injecting, testoviron, Bayer testoviron, into my fat, and this was how it worked. At 1 cc injected into the fat, and I don't like it. I really did not like it that it was staying there in my fat for weeks. That was bothering me big time, and I was like, what the fuck? I have this like hard mass in here where I injected that, and it's not going away over weeks. And then it finally absorbed, and I don't have any now, but I gave it a go. I gave it a go because this was a fad, and I was curious about it. So that's the thing, is that you're going to get lumps in your fat tissue, and it's going to be there for weeks. Now, you can probably avoid this if you put in really small amounts, like, 0.2 or 0.3 milliliters of testosterone, a very small amount in the fat. You could probably avoid that, using less than a cc. But you're saying you want to do this for gear. So you're talking about, multiple cc's, 3 cc syringes, or, 1 cc syringes minimum that you're wanting to do to take this. It's fine if you do that, but just know that you're going to have the gear sitting in your fat for, long periods of time. And it's not going to be like an intramuscular injection where the little bit of inflammation or, hardness that you can feel in the area where you did the injection is gone after 2 or 3 days. With the subcutaneous injection, it will be several weeks before that lump area or hardness area or inflammation area goes away from taking that injection.
If you would like your questions to be answered on the Steroids Podcast, go to steroidspodcast.com and leave a comment with your questions, or email or private message steroidspodcast@gmail.com or steroidspodcast on Instagram. Until next time.